Hey there, and welcome! I'm so glad you're here tonight. I've been diving deep into the Reddit rabbit hole, and I found some stories that I just had to share. Stories that make you think, stories that make you feel, and stories that just might make you say, "Wait, what?" So let's relax, unwind, and let these Redditors take us on a journey. Story 1. It's kind of wild to think how far I let it all go before finally realizing how used I was. But I guess love, or the idea of it, can really cloud your brain. I was 22 when I met Dylan. He was 30, a little older, and we clicked pretty fast. We both worked part-time at Starbucks back then. I was still in college, trying to stack enough cash to finally move out of my parents' place. They had a bad gambling problem, and let's just say home never really felt safe or stable. Dylan? He was dealing with a whole mess of debt from his student loans, plus his parents were in no shape to help out financially. We bonded over our messy family lives at first. That turned into long shifts together, coffee runs, shared playlists, and eventually a relationship. It felt like we had each other's backs in a world where no one else really did. 2 years passed, and I graduated. I had enough saved to get my own apartment, so I offered Dylan a SPOThe was still stuck living with his parents. He said yes, but there was a catch. He couldn't afford half the rent. I agreed to cover 80%, and he'd handle the other 20%, plus we'd split utilities. I figured we'd grow together, you know? But that's not what happened. He had a physically demanding job, long hours, early mornings. Meanwhile, my corporate job gave me some flexibility to work from home. Since I was already around the house more, I ended up doing pretty much everything: cleaning, cooking, laundry, dishes. I didn't mind it at first. I knew he was tired, and I wanted to help. The one thing I asked? Just take out the trash. That's it. But even that, he'd forget. Every time. One weekend, I came home exhausted, looking forward to a chill evening, but the place looked like a hurricane had hit it. Empty wrappers, dishes piled up, garbage overflowing. I spent hours cleaning, hoping maybe he'd notice. When he came home, he gave me a quick "I missed you" and flopped onto the couch to watch television like nothing happened. That's when it hit me. He didn't care. Or if he did, he wasn't showing it. I started crying. And not the cute, movie-style crying, like real tired, frustrated, soul-crushing crying. I told him I was just going to bed. I reminded him again to take the trash out, even though I knew what would happen. Next morning, still there. When he had the nerve to ask me what was for breakfast, I snapped. I told him he could make his own damn food. He called me rude, and that just opened the floodgates. I reminded him of everything I did, every chore, every meal, even ironing his shirts while he sat around drinking beer and watching television. He just blinked and said, "Well, I never asked you to do all that." I was stunned. Then he had the audacity to say his job was tough and I should be more supportive. He even threw in some line about how his mom used to take care of his dad that way. That's when I realized this man didn't want a partner. He wanted a replacement mom. So I laid it out. No more laundry, no more meals, no more help. Either he pays half the rent or he finds a new place. He stared at me like I'd just betrayed him, but I didn't flinch. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. So, I stuck to my word. I only cleaned up after myself, ate takeout straight from the containers, washed only my clothes. I didn't say anything else to Dylan, just let him figure out what it meant to be responsible for his own mess. And man, watching him scramble to find clean socks or iron his own wrinkled shirts while grumbling under his breath, I can't lie, it felt kinda great. He tried to play it off, thinking I'd eventually cave, that I'd feel bad and step in, but I didn't. When the dishes piled up and the garbage started to smell, he started throwing guilt trips. "Be a good girlfriend," he'd say. "You used to care." I didn't budge. Rent time came, and I told the landlord to expect only 50% from me. Dylan lost it. He said I was trying to screw him over. I calmly reminded him that he never thanked me when I paid 80%, so this was just me giving him what he wanted, fairness. Still, no apology. Not once. Not even a half-hearted, "Thanks for all you did." Just more blame, more excuses, more gaslighting. I should have seen through it sooner, but better late than never. Over the next couple of months, our fights escalated. Every disagreement somehow circled back to how I had changed. According to him, I had become selfish, cold. But the truth was, I was just done being used. Then came the breaking point. I got promoted at work, a solid jump in title and pay. I didn't even tell Dylan he heard it from a mutual friend, one of my coworkers. That night, he stumbled into the apartment drunk and woke me up. I was groggy and annoyed, but he insisted we talk. "I've met someone," he slurred. Immediately, I knew. Bella, the girl from his office, the one he introduced me to at a work party once. Rich girl, industrialist's daughter. I remember her shaking my hand like I was just some intern. Dylan said he was falling for her, that she was a real woman. I didn't even feel hurt, just numb. We were roommates by then, not partners. I told him calmly that I was glad he found someone new, and we should just end things peacefully. He blinked like he didn't understand. "Wait, you're not jealous?" he asked. I laughed. I told him I was relieved. He kept digging though, trying to provoke something. Said my promotion had made me arrogant. That Bella was better because she just wanted to get married and have kids. I told him every woman gets to want different things. Bella wanted a housewife life. I didn't, simple as that. Then he had the nerve to ask if I'd be okay paying rent alone. That's when I let him know. With my promotion, I could now afford the whole place by myself. You should have seen his face. His ego couldn't handle it. "You're trying to show off," he snapped. But I just smiled. Told him he had until the end of the month to move out. He could sleep on the couch till then. That week, he started packing. The night before he was supposed to leave, I came home and found him on the couch with Bella. She was in our apartment, sitting comfortably, like she owned the place. I greeted her politely, but she didn't even say hello. Just looked me up and down like I was dirt on her shoe. Later, in the kitchen, she stared at me while I made spaghetti. I ignored her, but as I was walking back to my room, I overheard them talking. Why were you even with her?" she asked. Dylan laughed and said, "She was dumb enough to cover my rent. I saved a lot off her." I froze. He had used me from day one, bragged about it. And now they were laughing about me like I was some joke. I didn't let them see me cry. I just went upstairs and sobbed into my pillow, quietly, alone. But that night, something in me shifted. The grief faded. And in its place came something else, clarity. The next morning they were gone. Dylan had finally moved out. And for the first time in years, the apartment was all mine. Weeks passed, and peace finally returned to my space. I danced around the apartment, cleaned everything top to bottom, lit candles, played music, just enjoyed being alone. For once, the silence wasn't heavy, it was healing. Dylan? He was a memory I didn't miss. But then about 2 months later, a coworker pulled me aside at work. "Did you hear? Dylan and Bella are getting married." I laughed out loud at first. Like, already? We had just broken up. But sure enough, they showed me the engagement photos. Picture-perfect smiles, designer outfits. Her diamond ring looked like it had its own zip code. Everyone kept saying how happy they looked. I told myself it didn't matter. I'd already moved on. But when I got home that evening and checked my mailbox, there it was. A wedding invitation from Dylan and Bella. My stomach dropped. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they were just being polite. Until I saw the handwritten message scrawled inside, "I want you to attend my wedding so you can see the grand life I'm going to have with Bella." It was like a slap in the face. All those years I spent supporting him, loving him, carrying him, and now this? He invited me just to rub it in, to parade his new life in front of me like some twisted trophy. I sat on my bed, holding that card, and something deep in my chest cracked open. Rage, pettiness, exhaustion, closure, it all mixed together into one single thought. Fine, let's play. I opened my laptop and started scrolling through Bella's socials, photo after photo. Then I found what I was looking for, Jake, her ex. They had dated forever. High school sweethearts, tons of old pictures. They only broke up 6 months ago. On impulse, I sent Jake a friend request. He accepted a few hours later. I messaged him, told him who I was, told him about the wedding, and then I invited him to come with me to their wedding. Jake was surprisingly down to talk. And oh boy, the tea spilled fast. He told me Bella cheated on him with Dylan. She'd been stringing Jake along, always chasing older guys. And yeah, it hurt. But he wasn't shocked. He even said it still stung to see her with someone else. So I told him everything, how Dylan used me for rent, laughed at me, disrespected me. Jake? He was horrified. And then he said yes. So wedding day comes, and I walk in, arm in arm with Jake, the ex she cheated on, the one she left behind. Dylan's face when he saw us? Priceless. He marched up to me, barely holding his anger in, and hissed, "Why are you here with Bella's ex?" I just smiled and said, "Enjoy your big day." He had to walk back down the aisle, fake smiling for the guests, while glaring at us like he wanted to scream. Couldn't make a scene though, too many people around. Bella didn't see us right away. But later at the reception, when she walked in wearing a new dress and finally spotted Jake, she froze. I could almost hear her brain rebooting. "What are you doing here with her?" she asked Jake. I let him do the talking. "I came to support your marriage," he said with a smile. Her face turned red. She pulled him aside. I saw Dylan watching them from across the room, stiff and pale. The music kept playing, people kept dancing, but time sorta paused. An hour went by, no sign of the bride. Then a bridesmaid came running in with a note. She stood on stage and read it out loud, her voice shaking. "I made a mistake. I can't marry Dylan." Seeing Jake again reminded me of how much I still love him. "I'm sorry to everyone, but I need to follow my heart." Gasps, silence, then chaos. Dylan stood there, humiliated, alone. The entire event plan just to show off in front of May had crumbled right in front of everyone. And I didn't even have to lift a finger. After the chaos of the wedding day, I didn't expect to hear from Dylan again. I figured he'd disappear, go lick his wounds, maybe find someone else to mooch off of. But nope, the texts started coming in first. Angry ones, accusatory ones, then voicemails, calls. He said I had ruined his life, that I'd embarrassed him, sabotaged his future. He swore up and down I'd planned everything with Bella and Jake, like I was some evil mastermind. I ignored every single message. But the man couldn't take a hint. That weekend, he showed up at my place. I didn't open the door at first, I just told him to leave. He refused, said he had to talk. So I cracked the door open just enough to see his face-erd, angry, desperate. He started shouting, blaming me for everything. Said he'd quit his job before the wedding because he thought he'd never have to work again. Bella was supposed to fix his life. That was his plan all along. I let him rant. Let him dig his own hole. Then, when he paused to breathe, I finally spoke. "I heard what you said to Bella that night, about using me, about how dumb I was for paying your bills." His face dropped. That was the first time I'd ever seen him truly speechless. I told him I did those things because I loved him, because I thought we were building something real. And yeah, maybe I was naive, but I sure as hell wasn't anymore. Then I reminded him that I didn't cause Bella to leave. She was a grown woman. She made her own choice. If he wanted to be mad at someone, he should be mad at her, not me. He tried spinning it again, said I shouldn't punish him for the past, that he deserved better, that I ruined his shot at a new life. I just stared at him, blinking slowly, then pulled out my phone and told him I'd call the cops if he didn't leave. He backed off quick, said I was overreacting. I shut the door in his face and locked it twice. After that, I called my family, told them everything, changed my locks, bought a camera for the door, just in case. But honestly, I didn't feel scared. I felt calm, like I was finally done. A few weeks passed, and life got busy again. Work was good, the apartment felt safe and mine, and the Dylan drama started to fade into background noise. Then, one day, Jake messaged me. He wanted to meet. We grabbed lunch, and he brought Bella. At first, I thought she was gonna confront me, but she didn't. She actually apologized, sincerely, said she regretted how she treated me, said she saw how independent and strong I was, and it made her feel insecure. She told me how Dylan used to trash talk me to her, how he made himself the victim, saying I was cold and demanding. But eventually, she realized he'd been manipulating her too. She said seeing me again at the wedding shook her, that it reminded her who she used to be before Dylan got in her head. She said she didn't plan to leave him that day, but when she saw Jake and heard the way Dylan talked about their future, like she was a prize and not a person, she knew. She chose love, real love. Jake sat there the whole time, smiling gently, and you could just tell they were in it now. Not perfect, not fairy tale, but real. I forgave her. Honestly, I didn't want to carry that bitterness anymore. When lunch was over, we hugged, and that was it. No more drama, no more tension, just peace. Now, I'm focused on me. Still working hard, still building my life, and finally sleeping better. Dylan's future? I don't know, and I don't care. I hope he learns something. I hope he stops chasing women like stepping stones. But that's his road, not mine. Mine is quiet now. Simple, free. And for the first time in a long time, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Story 2. So I walked into my kitchen at 2 a.m., expecting to grab a glass of water, and instead found my roommate butt naked, eating shredded cheese straight from the bag, crying. All right, so for context, me and my roommate Jason moved into this apartment about 4 months ago. We were college friends, kind of fell out of touch, but when we both ended up in the same city for work, we figured, why not split rent and room together again? He seemed normal enough. Emphasis on seemed. Now, Jason's always had this dramatic flair about him. Like, he talks with his hands a lot, makes weird metaphors when he's drunk, that kind of thing. But nothing too wild. At least not until this one night. It's like 2 a.m. I'd fallen asleep on the couch watching some true crime thing on Netflix. Woke up super thirsty and shuffled over to the kitchen, lights still off. I round the corner and boom. There's Jason. Buck. Naked. Just crouched in front of the fridge. Cheese bag in one hand, mouth full, tears in his eyes. I just froze. I didn't even say anything at first, 'cause my brain was trying to figure out what dimension I had just woken up in. Eventually, I'm like, dude? He turns his head slowly like something out of a horror movie, eyes puffy, and just goes, "She blocked me, man." I'm still trying not to make eye contact with the situation, and I ask, "Who blocked you?" Apparently, it was some girl he'd been seeing for like 3 weeks. They had one of those super fast whirlwind situations met on Hinge. 3 dates, lots of texting, talked about going to Mexico or something ridiculous. Then, out of nowhere, she ghosted and blocked him on everything. So now, instead of processing like a normal person, he decided the solution was to strip completely naked, cry, and eat a family-size bag of shredded Mexican blend cheese like it was therapy. I ask the obvious question, why are you naked? He wipes his face with the back of his hand like a toddler and goes, "Clothes are a lie, so is love." I didn't even respond. I just slowly backed out of the kitchen, went back to the couch, and sat there staring at the ceiling trying to process what the hell just happened. Next morning, he's fully dressed, acting like it didn't happen. He even made coffee and offered me toast. I asked him if he was okay, and he just said, "Yeah, rough night. I'm over it now." Dude. Number. That was not just a rough night. That was an emotional exorcism involving dairy and nudity. Anyway, I've started locking my bedroom door at night, just in case. Story 3. So, this happened last month, and I still can't believe it actually worked in my favor. I was working from home like usual, half listening to this big department Zoom meeting that included people way above my pay-graded directors, VPs. Even the CEO was lurking silently in the participant list. I was camera off, muted, just sipping coffee in my hoodie while skimming emails on the side. At one point, I got up to grab a snack, and that's when my 80-pound golden retriever, Baxter, decided he wanted to be part of the corporate world. I guess I hadn't locked my keyboard, because when I came back, my camera was on, my mic was on, and there was Baxter sitting in my chair, staring directly into the camera like he was about to give a quarterly earnings update. His tongue was hanging out, tail wagging, and to make things worse, or better, someone had pinned my video. He was full screen for everyone. And then it happened. Our VP, completely straight-faced, goes, "Thank you, Baxter, for that insightful update on project timelines." The entire meeting exploded with laughter. Even the CEO unmuted to chuckle and said, "Best presentation I've seen all quarter." I was mortified when I popped back on screen to replace him, apologizing while trying to wrestle him off the chair. I thought I was done for. Instead, later that day, I got a Slack message from my manager saying, "You made an impression. In a good way, let's talk next week." 1 week later, I got a promotion. So yeah, my dog accidentally went viral in the corporate Slack, got called a team morale MVP, and now I'm somehow a team lead. He still sits in on my calls sometimes. I swear people pay more attention when he's around. Moral of the story: never underestimate the power of a good boy in a business setting. Story 4. Deep inside, since childhood, I have felt something that was hard to put into words. I remember spending days at home or playing outside, feeling a connection to something Greatera simple presence of existence itself. Looking around, I saw the world as solid, understandable, and real, but I still couldn't grasp what was behind it. And even though I couldn't explain it, I felt that something was the foundation of everything. Something that didn't need an explanation but was the base of all reality. At that time, I had no idea what it was, but later I understood it was light. Not the kind we think of when we turn on a flashlight, but a universal, invisible light that shapes and fills everything. As time passed and I got more involved in life science and later my own self-image, I started paying less attention to it. I lost myself in everyday worries about the future, how people saw me, and the expectations society placed on me. I stopped noticing what once felt so natural, that quiet connection to the world. People around me, without a doubt, believed in their own versions of reality. Each person had their own idea of what was important, what gave life meaning. For some, light was a source of warmth, happiness, and safety. For others, it was something dangerous, something that blinded, hurt, or destroyed. Everyone looked at the world through their own beliefs, creating frames that shaped their reality. The more I tried to see what they saw, the more the truth became unclear. What once seemed simple and obvious turned into a mixture of ideas and illusions, reflecting not the true nature of light, but the limits of our understanding. I realized that people have a natural need to give meaning to everything. We feel a strong urge to organize the world, to create some kind of structure that helps us understand it. We believe that without this order, everything will fall apart, and we won't feel safe. But do we really need to do this? Or is it just our fear of the unknown, our desire to control what we cannot fully understand? A question started to form in my mind. Did the light really change as I grew older? Did it become brighter, warmer, clearer? Or did it become smaller, colder, and more hidden? The answer was simple: no. It was always the same, invisible to those who looked at it only through their own beliefs, only in ways that fit their ideas. It existed beyond illusions, beyond the stories we created to make sense of it. And yet, I still believed in different ideas about myself, whether I was accepted by others, whether my actions were right. I was caught in this game of the mind, pressured by a society that focused on surface-level things, missing the true beauty that is all around us. Only when I understood that real light does not change based on our thoughts, I felt peace. In this simple, unchanging light where there were no shadows, no bright spots, I found real freedom. Freedom from everything others had placed on me. I realized that the light I once tried to define does not change, does not obey our need to understand it. It simply is just like existence itself. And then another question came to me. If the light does not change, what is it that changes in our lives? And I think the answer is our perception. The way we, carrying our beliefs, try to give meaning to what already exists, instead of just accepting it as it is. Maybe this gives us a sense of control, or maybe it makes us forget what is truly important. In the end, if the essence of existence stays the same, are we not just shadows trying to reflect in an endless space? What do you think? Before we move on, let's give ourselves a few seconds to unwind. Feel the weight of your body settling into your chair or wherever you're listening from. Imagine any tension melting away. Listen to the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. There's no rush. Just allow yourself to be present in this moment without any expectations. Just breathe and let the story settle. We'll be right back. Ready to continue? Let's get back to the story. Story 5. So, last weekend, I saw a flyer in our apartment lobby that said, "Community Gathering. Free food, music, and more." With a date and time listed for Saturday afternoon. I live in a big complex, so I figured it was one of those neighborly, get-to-know-each-other type BBQs. Cool, right? Come Saturday, I throw on my best chill weekend outfit Hawaiian shirt, shorts, sunglasses on my head, and even bring a 6-pack of beer to contribute. I follow the sound of faint music and laughter to the courtyard area, but it's a bit quieter than I expected. I round the corner, and bam, there's a big white tent, people sitting in folding chairs, and a giant poster-sized photo of some older dude smiling peacefully. It takes a second to click. This is not a BBQ. This is a freaking memorial service. But at this point, I've already been seen. An older lady waves me over with a kind smile like I'm part of the family. I panic. Instead of turning around and walking away like a normal person, I just commit. I sit down with my 6-pack still in hand like some kind of clueless frat cousin. Someone hands me a small plate of finger foods. No music. Just a slideshow of the guy's life and people giving heartfelt speeches about how Greg loved his garden and never missed a chance to help a neighbor. I'm sitting there in literal flip-flops, holding a Coors Light, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. At some point, they do this open mic thing where people can share stories about Greg. I swear to you, a lady in front of me turns and whispers, "You were one of his coworkers, right?" And I panicked so hard, I just nodded. She encourages me to say something, and folks, I blacked out. I stood up, walked to the mic, and just said, "Greg was a real one. He'll be missed." Then I just sat down. No one questioned it. A few people even nodded like I'd said something profound. After it ended, I helped fold chairs because I felt so guilty. Turns out Greg lived in my building and actually did help run community events. So, I guess I accidentally honored him? Anyway, I still have no idea who Greg was, but rip to the real one. Story 5. I didn't plan to leave that Thursday. Hell, I barely packed a bag. But something in me just snapped. I was sitting in my apartment, staring at the same 3 tabs on my laptop, my work email, a half-written spreadsheet, and a paused YouTube video of a guy building a log cabin in the woods. The kind of peaceful, silent life that felt more like a fantasy than something someone could actually live. I wasn't even watching it anymore, I was just frozen. And then I just closed the laptop. No emails, no goodbyes, no "I'm taking time off" text to my boss. I threw a hoodie in my backpack, my toothbrush, a book I hadn't opened since I bought it, and just got in my car. The gas tank was half full and I didn't have a destination. I just drove. Eventually, after about 4 hours and 2 bad gas station coffees, I ended up in this tiny lakeside town called Fair Hollow. It wasn't even on my GPS unless I zoomed in real close. The kind of place where you blink and you've passed it. I saw a hand-painted wooden sign that said, fair hollow home of the friendly ducks. I didn't know ducks could be that significant to a town, but okay. I pulled in around 5 p.m. The sun was just starting to lower, casting that golden glow across the lake that looked like it came straight out of a Windows screensaver. There was one small inn, literally called the Lakeside Inn. It had a wraparound porch and rocking chairs out front, like something from a storybook. I figured, why not? Inside, the lobby smelled like fresh cookies and old wood. A woman in her 60s was behind the front desk reading a paperback mystery novel. She looked up at me over her reading glasses and smiled like she'd known me forever. "You look like you need a room and a cookie," she said. Yeah, honestly. She laughed and handed me a key actual metal key, not a card. "Room 3, bathrooms at the end of the hall. Cookies are in the jar. Don't bother with a credit card right now. You can settle up whenever." I almost asked how she knew I wasn't a serial killer, but I figured in a town like this, people just went with their gut. And I guess my gut said, burnt-out city guy who needs a nap. After I dropped my bag, I wandered outside and sat by the lake on this weathered bench. It was quiet, like really quiet, not in a creepy way, just peaceful. You don't realize how loud your life is until you sit in actual stillness. And that's when I met Jerry. Jerry is a duck. At least, I think he's a duck. He might be some kind of hybrid goose-duck situation. Big guy kind of waddles like he owns the place. He just walked right up to me and stared. I said, "Hey man," and I swear to you, he nodded. Then he sat next to the bench. Not on it, obviously he's a duck, but right beside it like he was keeping me company. We just sat there. Me, a slightly disheveled man in a hoodie with city stress dripping off him, and Jerry, the unofficial mayor of the lake. Eventually, this kid, maybe 7 or 8 years old, ran up with a slice of bread and called out, "Jerry, no bothering the guests." The duck waddled over, snatched the bread like it was owed to him, and took off into the water with a little victory splash. "Sorry about him," the kid said, grinning. "He thinks he's people." I laughed harder than I had in weeks. That night, I slept with the windows open. The air smelled like pine and lake water, and there were crickets chirping somewhere in the dark. It wasn't total silence, but it was the kind that felt like a lullaby. And for the first time in a long time, my brain didn't go to war with itself the second I laid down. I didn't know it yet, but this trip was going to be way more than just an escape. Something about Fair Hollow started to crack open parts of me I'd buried for a long time. And it all started with Jerry the duck. I woke up the next morning to birdsong. Not a phone alarm, not honking or construction outside my apartment window, just birds. Real birds. Like the kind that sing because the sun's up, not because someone programmed it into their phone. I didn't even check my phone, which was still somewhere in my backpack. The clock on the wall said it was 7:23 a.m. I don't usually see that hour unless I'm sleep-deprived or running late, but that morning, it felt natural. I threw on my hoodie again and stepped out onto the porch of the inn. A foggy mist hovered just above the lake. You know those mornings where it looks like the world's still dreaming? That kind. There were 3 older folks already out there in the rocking chairs, 2 women and a man. They all had steaming mugs of coffee and matching knit cardigans. which I swear had to be some kind of local uniform. They looked like they'd been sitting there since the dawn of time, just rocking, sipping, and occasionally commenting on the weather. The man nodded at me. "You must be the fella from room 3. Sleep okay?" "Like a rock," I said. "You got a porch face," one of the women added. "A what now?" She smiled. "You know, some folks can't sit still, even on a porch. They get all jittery, need a screen, need noise, but you've got a porch face. You could sit and rock and sip for hours, I can tell." I had no idea if that was a compliment, but it felt like one. So I sat down in the empty rocker next to them. The innkeeper, who I'd learned was named Margie, came out a few minutes later with a fresh mug of coffee and handed it to me like I'd earned it just by showing up. It was strong. Not bitter, not sweet, just good. Real coffee, no foam, no syrups, just coffee. I stared out at the lake, slowly waking up in that golden morning light, and I swear my brain whispered, "This is what peace tastes like." After a while, we started talking. Their names were Fran, Elsie, and Hank. They were all longtime Fair Hollow residents, retired, sort of, but still involved in town life. They told me the story of Jerry the Duck. He'd been around for years and supposedly once stopped traffic by waddling into the middle of Main Street and refusing to move for 20 minutes. He was kind of a local legend. Everyone feeds him, but no one owns him, Fran said. He's a free spirit, kind of like I was pretending to be for the moment. Elsie asked what brought me to town, and I half lied. I said I needed a break, left the rest out. Didn't tell them about the burnout, the anxiety, the deep-rooted exhaustion that I'd let grow quietly over the last couple of years. Didn't tell them about how close I'd gotten to just quitting everything entirely. I just said I needed air, and they nodded like they understood. "You stay as long as you need," Hank said. And that was it. No judgment, no advice, just permission. The kind I didn't know I needed. Around 10 a.m., I wandered into town, if you can call it that. Fair Hollow had one main street with about 8 shops, a diner, a tiny library, and a general store that sold everything from fishing hooks to jars of homemade jam. I ended up at the diner, mostly because the smell of pancakes practically pulled me through the door. It was one of those old-school places with red vinyl booths and laminated menus that hadn't changed since the 80s. A handwritten sign on the wall said, "Special, whatever Ed feels like making today." Ed apparently was the cook and part owner, and when I asked what the special was, he said, "Bacon apple pancakes. Sit anywhere." I did, and they were incredible. The waitress, who looked about my age and had a purple streak in her hair, refilled my coffee without asking and asked where I was from. When I told her I just kinda drove until I landed here, she smiled like that made perfect sense. "We get a lot of those," she said. "The lake does that to people. Kinda pulls them in." Her name was Sam, short for Samantha, but only my grandma calls me that. She moved here 5 years ago from some big city job she hated, bought half the diner with Ed, her uncle, and never looked back. "Don't you miss the city?" I asked. She sipped her own coffee from behind the counter and shrugged. "Miss parts of it. Food delivery at midnight, the chaos, the buzz. But I don't miss crying in the break room of a marketing firm because I forgot to schedule a tweet. Fair. Honestly, really fair." We talked for a while. She told me about local events like the Sunday Farmers Market that also doubled as a live music venue, and mentioned a canoe rental guy named Leo who was always looking for an excuse to give out discounts if you promised not to tip the boat. I stayed at that diner for almost 2 hours. Not because I was avoiding anything, but because I didn't need to be anywhere. No deadlines, no calendar invites, just pancakes and quiet conversation with a stranger who didn't feel like one. That night, I found myself back on the porch with Fran, Elsie, and Hank. We didn't talk much this time, just watched the stars come out. The air was crisp, and someone had lit a citronella candle that made the whole scene feel like summer camp for grown-ups. And somewhere off in the dark, I heard the soft quack of Jerry, probably settling in for the night. I didn't know it yet, but I was starting to fall for this place. Not in a touristy, postcard kind of way, but in a way that made my chest feel a little less tight. Like maybe I was finally breathing again. By day 3, I started leaving my phone off on purpose. Not because I was trying to be some deep, unplugged, live-in-the-moment guy. It was more like I just didn't care what was happening anywhere else. I'd fallen into this rhythm. Morning coffee on the porch with the regulars. Slow walks through town, long silences that didn't feel awkward. The kind of life where nothing big happens, but everything still feels right. That morning, I finally took up Sam's suggestion and went down to the lake to rent a canoe. The boathouse was basically a crooked shed with peeling blue paint and a big hand-painted sign that read, Leo's Floats, Rentals and Bad Advice. Leo was sitting in a folding chair outside the shed, drinking iced tea from a mason jar and doing a crossword. He was in his 50s, tanned, with wild salt and pepper hair and a tie-dye shirt that looked homemade. When he saw me, he waved like we were old friends. "You the new guy everyone keeps nodding at?" he said. "I guess." "Cool. You want to float?" I nodded. He handed me a paddle and a life vest that had clearly survived decades of lake weather. $20 or one interesting story. Your call. I paid the 20, told him I'd owe him a story later. He didn't give me instructions, just pointed. Watch for the geese near the North Shore. They're jerks. Otherwise, enjoy. And I did. The lake was like glass that morning, shimmering, quiet, not a single motor in sight, just birds and trees and the occasional ripple from something swimming below. The canoe wobbled at first, but once I got the hang of it, I was gliding like I actually knew what I was doing. There's something weirdly meditative about paddling. One stroke at a time, all you hear is water and breath. No notifications, no pressure, just forward motion and stillness at the same time. About halfway across, I let the paddle rest and just drifted. Sunday warming my shoulders. A light breeze. And this slow, creeping thought entered my brain. What if I didn't go back? Not a dramatic, quit everything and move to the woods kind of thought. More like a whisper, just wondering. Playing with the idea that maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than the hustle I'd been choking on for years. After the float, Leo handed me a banana bread muffin he claimed was life-altering and refused to charge me for it. "That's for not tipping the canoe," he said, grinning. It was life-altering, honestly. Soft, warm, full of cinnamon and chopped walnuts. I told him so, and he just gave me a wink and said, "It's the lake. Everything tastes better by the water." Later that afternoon, Sam invited me to a small cookout on the beach. "Very unofficial," she said. "No flyers, no Facebook events, just people, fire, and snacks." So that evening, I showed up with a 6-pack of root beer I picked up from the general store. It was either that or jalapeno kombucha. And there were already about a dozen people gathered around a campfire near the water. Folding chairs, blankets, sticks for roasting, super casual. Jerry the duck was there too, obviously, patrolling for dropped food like a hungry little sheriff. There was music playing from someone's old portable speaker. Folk songs, mostly. Some kids ran around with sparklers while the sun dipped below the trees. It was the kind of night you dream about in the middle of a February snowstorm. People were making campfire bread, which I'd never heard of. Turns out it's dough wrapped around a stick and cooked slowly over the fire. When it's golden and crisp, you pull it off and fill it with honey, butter, or jam. It was one of the most simple, magical things I'd ever eaten. Sam sat down next to me with a paper plate full of them. "These are basically a town ritual," she said, passing me one. "They taste like summer," I said with my mouth full. She laughed. "Exactly." We talked for hours. About nothing and everything. She told me how she'd cried the first week she moved to Fair Hollow because the silence freaked her out, and then cried again when she realized she didn't want to leave. "I thought peace would feel boring," she said. "Turns out it feels like finally hearing your own thoughts." That one hit me a little harder than I expected. The stars came out while someone started strumming a guitar. No one sang. We all just listened. At some point, I asked Sam if there were any places in town to stay longer term. Not a full commitment or anything, just curiosity. She thought for a minute and said, "There's a little blue house across from the library that used to be a rental. Think it's been empty since winter. I can ask around." And just like that, the whisper from earlier turned into something louder. A possibility. That night, I walked back to the inn with sand in my shoes, smoke in my clothes, and this strange warmth in my chest. Not just from the fire, but from people, from laughter. From dough wrapped on sticks and ducks named Jerry and strangers who became something more in just a few days. When I climbed into bed, I felt heavy in the best way, tired but not drained. And I didn't dream about work or deadlines or the city. I dreamt about that little blue house. By the next morning, I was already picturing myself unlocking the front door of that little blue house, even though I hadn't seen it yet. The idea had taken root, and it felt less like a vacation fantasy and more like something possible. I took my coffee out on the porch, like usual. Hank was already there in his robe and slippers, looking like a retired wizard. "You look like a man thinking about something permanent," he said without even looking at me. "How'd you know?" He gave a slow sip and said, "Fair Hollow's got a look it gives people. When it likes you, you've got the look back." I didn't even argue. I just rocked quietly and sipped. Later that morning, Sam met me outside the library, which looked like it used to be a chapel. Stained glass windows, a little bell tower, and ivy climbing up one side. It was the kind of building that made you lower your voice without meaning to, like it demanded respect even before you walked in. She pointed across the street. That's the house. And there it was, blue siding, white trim, a little porch with a swing, and a tiny garden full of half-wild flowers and mint growing like weeds. The kind of place you draw when you're 6 and someone asks you what a house looks like. Apparently, it had belonged to an older woman named May who passed away the year before. Her daughter had used it as a short-term rental for a while but never kept up with it. Sam said it had been sitting empty since December. "Want to peek through the windows?" she asked. We crossed the street, and I cupped my hands against the glass. Inside, it was cozy and cluttered with old furniture, the kind of stuff that smells like stories. A bookshelf half filled, some dusty curtains, a kitchen table with a mug still sitting on it like someone meant to come back, but just never did. Sam texted the daughter for me and got a reply in 20 minutes. She says you can rent it for super cheap if you agree to water the garden and not let raccoons in through the back door. Apparently that's happened before. "Deal," I said. I didn't even hesitate. By noon, I had the keys. I walked through every room slowly. The bedroom was small but bright. The bathroom had clawfoot tub. The kitchen had one of those old-fashioned stoves with the big metal burners. And the best part? A little nook by the window with a bench, like it was meant for rainy mornings with tea and a book. I sat down on the floor, cross-legged in the middle of the living room, and let the quiet settle over me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to do anything. No next steps. No 5-year plan. Just this. Later, I went back to the library to thank Sam again and ended up wandering inside for the first time. A little bell jingled as I pushed the heavy door open, and the smell of old pages and polished wood hit me like a hug from a grandparent. The place was beautiful. High-arched ceilings, sunlight streaming through colored glass, rows and rows of books all lovingly labeled by hand. There was a big fireplace in the back with armchairs around it and a sign that read, "No Wi-Fi. Pretend it's 1993. I loved it immediately. And then I met Tilly. Tilly is the library cat. She's enormous, not fat regal, all gray with a white patch over one eye, like she's constantly judging your book taste. She didn't meow when she saw me. She just trotted over, circled my leg once, and flopped on her side like, "You've been accepted." The librarian, a soft-spoken man in suspenders named Norman, saw me petting her and said, "She doesn't do that for just anyone." Tilly blinked at me. I blinked back. We had a moment. Norman asked if I was new in town, and I told him I was kind of moving in. He didn't ask for a backstory, just said, "You should get a card. Library cards are free but priceless," and handed me a little form to fill out. I walked out 20 minutes later with a mystery novel, a book about bird calls, and a local history zine someone had stapled together by hand. That evening, I moved into the little blue house. Well, I say moved in, but really I just brought my backpack, some snacks from the general store, and the books. No furniture yet, no big plans, just me and the space. I made a cup of tea on the ancient stove, sat on the porch swing, and watched the fireflies come out. It was quiet, peaceful, but not the lonely kind of quiet, The "I'm okay right now" kind. Later, as I climbed into Bedtime, the world's squeakiest mattress, I realized I hadn't had a single intrusive thought all day. No spirals, no stress about what I was missing, just a soft, steady sense of presence. And when I finally drifted off, I dreamt of mint gardens, fat library cats, and a lake that glowed silver under the moonlight. The following Sunday was market day. I woke up to the sound of music drifting through my open window and the distant chatter of people gathering in the town square. Fair Hollow's Farmers Market was the one weekly event that even the porch regulars got dressed up, for which in this case meant cleaner flannel and maybe a sun hat. The little blue house was just 2 blocks from the square, so I walked. No car, no rush. Just sunshine, neighbors waving from porches, and the smell of fresh bread baking somewhere in the air. The market wasn't big. Maybe a dozen stalls in a semicircle around the gazebo, but it felt like something out of a cozy novel. Local honey, hand-woven baskets, homemade pickles, potted herbs, and a table where someone was literally just selling nice rocks. Not even gems. Just nice rocks. I bought one, of course. Leo was there too, in a Hawaiian shirt this time, selling jars of his banana bread mix and claiming it was medically proven to improve your mood by 300%. I got one and told him I'd still owe him that story. "Take your time," he said. "Good stories show up when they're ready." Sam was helping out at her Uncle Ed's food booth, serving bacon cheddar scones and pouring lemonade from a giant glass container with mint leaves floating on top. She spotted me, waved me over, and slid me a scone on a napkin without a word. That's the thing about Sam, she just gets it. After browsing a while, I ended up sitting on a bench near the gazebo with Fran, who was people watching with a level of commitment I respected deeply. She pointed out every single person who passed and told me a little story. "That's Doris. Brings soup to anyone who gets the flu. That's Henry makes his own wine. Tastes like feet, but we love him for it. And that's James used to be a big deal lawyer in the city. Now carves birds out of driftwood. Says he's never been happier." She sipped her coffee and gave me a sidelong glance. Funny how many people end up here after not meaning to. I looked around at the market, the sunlight dancing through the trees, the laughter of someone chasing their kid near the flower stall, and I got it. Really got it. Nobody was showing off. Nobody was networking. It wasn't about success or ambition or who knew what. It was just Tom life. Simple and slow and good. Later that afternoon, I brought my library books back and stayed for a while. Norman let me help shelve a few returns, and Tilly took up her usual post on the sunny windowsill. At some point, a little girl walked in with her mom, pointed at Tilly, and whispered, "She's the queen of books." Yeah, Fair Hollow had a library cat queen. Of course it did. I stopped by the general store on my way home to pick up groceries, bread, jam, coffee, and a little potted basil plant the owner insisted would get along with my front porch. When I got back to the house, I opened all the windows. The breeze carried in the smell of mint from the garden and the low hum of bees doing whatever bees do. I made a sandwich, grabbed a blanket, and took my lunch out to the back porch. I laid there for hours, just watching clouds pass overhead. I could feel time differently out there, not racing, not dragging, just existing. That night, there was a soft knock on my door. It was Sam. She had a pie. No explanation, no reason. Just said, "Had an extra." We sat on the porch swing with mismatched forks and the pie tin between us, eating straight from it like we were kids at summer camp. A soft orange glow came from the porch light above us, and every so often a cricket would chime in from the yard. "Been thinking about staying?" she asked after a while. I nodded. "Feels like I already am." She didn't say anything for a second, just nudged the pie tin toward me. "Good. We need more people who listen." To what? To the quiet. And maybe that was it. That was Fair Hollow, a place where the quiet wasn't empty, it was full of little sounds and kind people and space to breathe. As the evening stretched on, neighbors turned their porch lights on one by one, like stars blinking into view across the town. You could feel everyone settling in for the night, in sync, like a soft exhale. I walked Sam back to the diner, where she was closing up for the evening, and when I got home, I lit a candle on the windowsill, just because. I stood in the doorway for a second and looked around. The house was still creaky and half empty. The floorboards popped when I stepped in certain spots, and the faucet in the bathroom wheezed a little when it ran. But it felt like mine. Like home. I crawled into bed, basil plant on the windowsill, books stacked beside me, and the quiet of the lake town humming like a lullaby outside my walls. I didn't need a plan. Didn't need answers. Just this. Just here. Just now.